Radical Christians during the American Revolution contributed to the development of religious liberty and the separation of church and state in post revolutionary America. They played a part by opposing British tyranny. Together, we will discuss sermons, articles, letters, and more that will help us understand the why and the how this all came to be. Ezra Stiles served as a clergyman, or more specifically as a minister, from 1755 to 1777. During this time, he wrote the sermon, A Discourse on the Christian Union. The sermon was published in 1761 and highlights the need for unity among Christianity and the growing controversy that was taking place. Stiles heavily believed that if the religious division was not resolved, how detrimental it could be to Christianity in America. His hope of writing this would be that growth across churches would take place and that everyone could work together regardless what denomination the church represented. This resistance was not only damaging for the Christian communities, but also affected politics. The articles All Things Liberty and Religion and the American Revolution and Imperial History are both great resources to take a deeper dive into how radical Christians shaped politics at the time and the religious conflict that took place. Radical Christians were known for their defiance towards tyranny. At the time, they believed it was God's commands, thus being a spiritual obligation. The religious leaders were seen as more than just that, as they formed their churches in a religious political identity. With that being said, radical Christians did not care for these religious leaders as they represented political authority. This was especially true of Protestants, as they viewed Protestantism as free, not just in faith, but also free from any government ruler. This is drastically different than Catholicism, which was associated with tyranny. With that being said, there were some radical Christian preachers as well. There were several radical preachers during the American Revolution. One we have already discussed, which was Ezra Stiles. Some other radical Christian preachers included Jonathan Mayhew, Jacob Green, and John Witherspoon. Jonathan Mayhew was a Congregationalist who was most known for his role in rebelling tyranny and standing on his theological foundation, which led radical Christians to think that it was okay to disobey tyranny as well. Jacob Green was a Calvinist with strong morals, according to S. Scott Rower. He was not the typical radical Christian, as he preferred to write his truth rather than to speak it. His work all shared one common message, which was fighting for religious and political freedom. That brings us to John Witherspoon, who was a Presbyterian minister. Witherspoon was active in politics and actually signed the Declaration of Independence. He stood up for and believed it was moral of a Christian to refuse the tyranny of Britain. Charles Chauncey was also a radical leader whose ministry was discussed in The Appeal to the Public Answered. In this publication, it discusses Chauncey's acts such as defending churches that were not associated with England. Chauncey was most known for speaking out about not letting our churches be overcome with bishops sent by the Church of England. This act showed true of a radical Christian by defending freedom. Radical Christians were being led by radical leaders during the American Revolution. Their roles are outlined in The Glorious Cause by Robert Middlecoff. Radical Christians believed that it was their moral duty to defy tyranny and that God supported them to do that. Sanford Cobb also discusses the roles of radical Christians in the rise of religious liberty in America. Cobb is very specific and to the point when discussing radical Christians. Some specific groups that were known radical Christian groups included Quakers and the Anabaptists. What made these groups radical is their continued fight for freedom, which God was calling them to do. Therefore, they did not think that they would have any repercussions for their godly words and actions. Radicals in the Revolution discusses how revolutionary leaders were not pleased with the resistance they were facing from the radical Christian groups like the Quakers and the Anabaptists. While the revolution was supposed to bring freedom, for these radical Christians, it brought persecution first. Certain governments started enforcing laws that would make citizens take oaths or pay in order to help funding for the war. When these radical Christians refused, they were faced with harsher persecution, such as public shaming, treason, and even imprisonment. Once we gained independence from the British, the foundations laid by radical Christians helped to once and for all separate church and state. One by one, states started to end government funding for churches. Daniel Dressbach shares how Thomas Jefferson was supportive of this decision and wrote the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom in 1786, which made it law that no one could be persecuted because of their religion, like how they were during the American Revolution. Followed in 1791 was the First Amendment, which separated church and state by allowing freedom of speech, but more importantly, the freedom for religion in the United States.